Running J.P. Morgan Chase for 18 years teaches you many things. You learn to read numbers, yes, but far more importantly, you learn to see the pain behind those numbers. I have personally witnessed people who spent decades building everything they had watch it all erode because of a single wrong geographic decision. And let me be straightforward with you. As we enter 2026, a picture so dangerous is emerging in 7 states that describing them with softened words like expensive or challenging would be an intellectual dishonesty. These are financial traps that systematically destroy retirement wealth from the inside, operating like a demolition machine that is structural, systematic, and accelerating. I am not making a political commentary, nor am I interested in party colors. I am presenting a cold and hard picture based on tax policies, demographic data, fiscal health, and economic indicators that J.P. Morgan has been tracking across all 50 states for years. If you are preparing for retirement in 2026, or if you are already living as a retiree in one of these states, you must understand what you are truly in the middle of. And more critically, you need to act before these problems become chronic, before they turn into a burden impossible to lift off your shoulders. Now let us put these retirement traps on the table one by one, talk about why they are so dangerous right now at this very moment in 2026. The first state you absolutely must avoid is Illinois. Illinois is a financial wreck that has been rotting from the inside for decades and is now beginning to show visibly from the outside. The state's unfunded pension liabilities have surpassed $140 billion. I do not want to leave this number abstract. This means approximately $11,000 of debt for every single person in the state, including children. So how do governments deal with debts like these? They do not cut spending. They do not reform the system. They take more taxes from people who have income and assets but cannot easily relocate, meaning exactly you. At J.P. Morgan, we've been closely monitoring Illinois' fiscal picture for years, and the deterioration continues without losing speed. The state's credit rating is at the lowest level in the country, behind even some developing nations. They are piling debt upon debt because they cannot close their budget gaps. For retirees, this picture means 3 separate nightmares. First, property taxes running far above the national average, exceeding 2%. If you own a $300,000 home, you are paying $6,000 a year just in property taxes, without receiving a single cent's worth of service in return. Second, the taxation of retirement income at a rate of 4.95%. 401k, IRA, and pension payments all fall into this grip. Third, sales taxes, fuel taxes, and vehicle registration fees that grow larger every passing year. But what truly keeps me awake at night is the migration dynamic in Illinois. People are leaving rapidly. Far more are going than coming. While the tax base shrinks, the payments owed to former state employees continue to grow. There is only one way out of this equation. The burden on those who remain grows heavier with every passing year, and retirees are sitting at the very center of this vicious cycle, not knowing what to do. At J.P. Morgan, we tell our clients to take Illinois completely off the table for retirement. The risk is far, far beyond any advantage. The second state to avoid is New Jersey. New Jersey carries a large portion of the same problems Illinois faces, and it carries all of that weight with even higher costs. Property taxes are at the highest level in the country, pressing up against 2.5%. You are paying $10,000 a year for a modest $400,000 home just for the right to live there. Income tax rates exceeding 10% when combined with local taxes, the burden placed on retirement income and Social Security payments. And on top of that, the estate taxes, eating away at the inheritance you are trying to leave your children. But what truly makes New Jersey a trap for retirees is not just the taxes. The cost of many things is significantly above the national average. The calculations my team and I conducted at J.P. Morgan reveal a clear picture. You need to spend $85,000 in New Jersey to achieve the standard of living you could reach with $60,000 in a low-cost state like Tennessee or Texas. Just because of one difference: geography. 40% more money. When we spread that extra expense across a 25 25-year retirement period, we are talking about additional costs exceeding $600,000. The vast majority of retirees cannot afford to pay an extra $600,000 simply because of which state they live in, and they should not have to. New Jersey has also been seriously affected by unfunded pension debt and is struggling with a demographic grip similar to that in Illinois. While the young population flocks elsewhere seeking better opportunities, the older segment stays and requires ever-increasing public services. The third dangerous state is Connecticut. Connecticut's unfortunate distinction is being both excessively expensive and completely economically stagnant. For retirees, this dual picture is truly the most devastating combination, the worst of both worlds. High property taxes, high income taxes, high estate taxes, the burden layered onto retirement income, and one of the highest energy bills in the country, and this as a direct consequence of broken energy policies. But what makes Connecticut truly problematic is the economic stagnation that has accumulated over decades. Major businesses left one after another. General Electric moved first to Boston, then to Texas. Aetna went to New York. Dozens of hedge funds withdrew to Florida. This corporate exodus means fewer high-income taxpayers to support state spending, less revenue, higher taxes, more migration, and with each turn of this cycle, those who remain get squeezed a little tighter. Connecticut has also been caught in a serious demographic grip. Those approaching retirement are growing faster than those entering the workforce. Fewer working taxpayers, greater demand for services. The projections from our economic research team at J.P. Morgan are active. Connecticut, escaping this spiral over the next decade does not appear possible. The fourth state is California. I know this is open to debate. Millions of people love California, and I understand that. The climate is unmatched, the scenery is breathtaking, the cultural opportunities are world-class. But when you look through a purely financial lens, California is showing an increasingly hostile face to retirees. The highest income tax rates in the country, brackets exceeding 13%, cuts on retirement income and capital gains, and a constantly expanding tax net as spending outpaces revenue. Property taxes do not look as heavy as some other states on a percentage basis, but housing prices are so inflated that the actual amounts paid reach crushing levels. A modest home that could be purchased for $150,000 in Texas does not come below $800,000 in the majority of California markets. California's enormous unfunded liabilities, including retiree healthcare commitments, are deepening my concern. CalPERS, the state pension system, is running a shortfall of hundreds of billions of dollars, and that gap is not closing but continuing to grow. On top of that, long-term threats unique to this state that are not found elsewhere: water scarcity, earthquake risk, wildfire risk, systematic power outages, and infrastructure collapsing far faster than it is being maintained. The state's response to these problems is the same every single time: more taxes, more fees, more regulation. For retirees trying to sustain their lives on fixed income, this combination is simply not sustainable. I have personally seen J.P. Morgan clients who retired to California and were forced to relocate to other states because they could not meet the standard of living they had planned for. This is not an exception. It is a growing pattern. The fifth state is New York. New York, particularly with its regions outside New York City, carries the same ailments as the other states I have mentioned: high taxes, unfunded pension debt, the systematic departure of young people and businesses. But New York has a separate wound that carries critical importance specifically for 2026. The state is experiencing a deep drop in tax collection as high-income Manhattan workers have begun working from home. Before the pandemic, New York was collecting enormous amounts of income tax from thousands of high-income individuals who lived in New Jersey or Connecticut but worked in Manhattan. When these people shifted to working from home, their obligation to pay taxes to New York disappeared, and a hole of billions of dollars opened in the state budget. New York's response to this situation is extremely interesting and extremely disturbing, aggressively auditing every individual who is not a resident of the state but has any connection to New York companies. They are trying to tax people who do not live in the state and do not benefit from state services. This picture creates an extremely hostile environment for retirees who want to maintain investment business ties to New York from elsewhere. The estate tax that takes 16% of wealth above certain thresholds is a separate devastation for retirees who want to leave a meaningful inheritance to their children or grandchildren. At J.P. Morgan, we advise our clients to legally establish in a clear manner that they are not residents of New York before retiring. Otherwise, they may face aggressive tax audits and prolonged collection processes. The sixth state is Maryland. Maryland positioned itself as a high-tax, high-service model, but the picture you actually encounter is largely higher taxes and mediocre services, and this situation becomes even more pronounced outside the few wealthy counties near Washington, D.C. Retirement income is taxed, property taxes are at high levels, and taxes are regularly rising to finance spending increases and accumulating pension debt. The element that makes Maryland particularly insidious for retirees is the issue of geographic concentration of wealth. Moving to areas of the state outside the wealthy counties near D.C. means carrying that high level of tax burden while being unable to benefit from the services and amenities that justify those taxes. Maryland, while carrying largely unfunded pension liabilities, continues to borrow in order to cover its day-to-day expenses. If this were a company, it would be considered bankruptcy. The seventh and final state is Hawaii. I accept that Hawaii appears to be paradise for retirement, and that the climate and scenery are truly captivating. That is why this section is not easy for me to say, but the financial reality is extremely bitter. Hawaii is a visual paradise and a financial nightmare for most retirees. The cost of living is approximately 85% above the national average. Housing, food, energy, healthcare, transportation, everything comes with price tags far beyond the mainland. This is not simply because it is an attractive location. Hawaii is geographically disconnected from supply chains, available land for construction is limited, and regulatory policies are systematically increasing costs in every sector. On top of high income and property taxes, there are now wealth tax discussions as well. But the biggest and most insidious trap Hawaii holds for retirees is healthcare costs. There are good medical facilities, I will grant that, but the costs are terrifying, and Medicare does not cover the large portion of supplemental insurance expenses that become necessary in Hawaii. Within J.P. Morgan, we have seen clients who retired to Hawaii only to discover that their healthcare bills alone wiped out their entire retirement budget. The gap between dream and reality can be merciless. Now let us look at the common dynamic that makes these 7 states particularly risky in 2026, because what we have here is not coincidence. There is a pattern. First, every one of them has structural fiscal problems, and instead of recovering, these problems are deepening with accelerating speed. Unfunded pension liabilities, shrinking tax bases, growing spending items. These are not short-term pains to be resolved with temporary measures. They are chronic problems that have been accumulating for decades. Second, every one of them has a serious demographic grip. While the young population moves to states offering better opportunities, the older segment stays and requires ever-increasing public services. This picture is pushing the ratio between the workforce and retirees to an unsustainable point, and a reversal does not appear possible within such a near time frame. Third, all of them are responding to fiscal difficulties, not by reducing spending or reforming the structure, but by multiplying taxes. This is pushing every individual with income and assets, especially retirees with limited capacity to absorb rising costs, under an increasingly heavier burden. Fourth, in all of them, the cost of living is seriously disproportionate to the real income potential and opportunity level they offer. You pay California or New York prices, but most of the time you cannot access the economic advantages and opportunities those states provide to the same degree. So where should you retire instead? J.P. Morgan's data clearly shows which states are genuinely productive for retirees. Florida continues to maintain its status as the gold standard of retirement-friendly tax policies. No state income tax, no tax on retirement income, no estate tax. tax and relatively reasonable property taxes. The state is also making major investments in healthcare infrastructure specifically targeted at retirees. Texas offers similar tax advantages with a more diversified economy and lower overall costs compared to Florida. No state income tax, policies that attract the business world, and abundant affordable housing options. In Tennessee, wages or retirement income are not taxed, property taxes are low, and the general cost of living is running significantly below the national average. In addition to this, a strong healthcare infrastructure forms an important draw for retirees coming from high-tax states. North Carolina stands out with reasonable tax levels, quality healthcare systems, diverse geography stretching from mountains to coastlines, and a cost of living running 10 to 20% below the national average. Arizona comes to the fore with its outstanding climate, tax exemptions on retirement income for many retirees, and healthcare centers specializing in age-related medical care. The right choice comes down to finding states with sustainable fiscal policies, reasonable cost of living, and demographic trends that support rather than threaten a retirement-friendly stance. I also need to talk about the practical dimensions of relocating, because I know this is not purely a financial decision. Life is not made of numbers alone. First, consider a gradual transition. Spend the winter months in the target state while keeping your current residence. This approach allows you to test the new lifestyle without risk before making a permanent decision. Second, do not focus only on tax rates. Factor in all costs. Housing, healthcare, transportation, and daily expenses vary significantly from state to state, and over the long term, these differences compound into very large financial consequences. Third, do not overlook proximity to family and healthcare services. Lower costs mean nothing if you are disconnected from the support and care network you need as you age. Fourth, thoroughly understand residency determination requirements. Some states claim you as their own resident for tax purposes, even if you spend significant time elsewhere, and the very aggressive approaches are at play in this matter. Fifth, plan the move strategically to minimize tax consequences. The timing of when you establish residency in a new state directly affects how your retirement income and capital gains will be taxed. Within J.P. Morgan, we continue our work in these processes alongside financial planners and tax advisors who specialize in retirement relocations. The potential savings figures are so high that obtaining professional support to optimize the transition process generally turns into a many times over return on investment. In conclusion, let me say this, and I want to say it in the clearest way possible. Where you retire can easily make a difference of $200,000 to $500,000 in lifetime tax savings and reduced cost of living. This carries the meaning of years of additional security or a real legacy to leave your family. Do not allow the retirement savings you built through decades of work to be buried in the coffers of fiscally undisciplined state administrations that view retirees as cash cows. The 7 states I have named are silently destroying retirement wealth. Stay away. Your future self will thank you for choosing to stand on the right side today. With the economic and demographic trends gaining momentum in 2026, the gap between retirement-friendly states and states hostile to retirees will only continue to widen. Positioning yourself on the right side of this divide is still in your hands, but this window will not remain open forever.